Dead Space is a science fiction survival horror third-person shooter originally developed by Visceral Games. The remake is developed by Motive Studio and published by EA. The Dead Space franchise had created a unique and fleshed-out world through its games, movies, comics, and novels that always remained cohesive and entertaining while maintaining a skin-crawling creep factor that made you come back for more. After the backlash and downfall of Dead Space 3, fans figured that Dead Space was gone for good. Luckily, not only does Dead Space Remake put the series back on the map, it seems as if it is going to be thriving more than ever. Dead Space takes place in a distant future where humanity lacks enough resources to survive. Gargantuan spaceships known as planet crackers are created to travel to other planets and reap them of their natural resources. A search and rescue team that includes systems engineer Isaac Clarke makes their way to one of these planet crackers known as the USG Ishimura after it had gone radio silent. Isaac's girlfriend Nicole also works on the USG Ishimura, so he plans on visiting her as well after the team finds out what is wrong with the ship and gets it fixed. The team's mission quickly changes after they get aboard the Ishimura and find out that the ship has been overrun with unknown alien creatures that get dubbed as the Necromorph. Isaac Clarke must use his engineering skills to confront these flesh-tearing monsters and save his girlfriend from this horrific nightmare.
But you'll need to stabilize your orbit from there.
Standing by. Fast as you can, Isaac.
The story of the game is pretty standard when it comes to space sci-fi types of horror stories, but it is done very well with Dead Space. How plot points and lore unravel while you progress through the ship and within the main story of the game makes the entire experience feel very natural and easy to follow. The overarching presence of this alien existence sort of ruling over your surroundings where many people failed and lost their lives to it increases tension and your drive to survive. It is gripping looking through logs, watching holograms, and listening to transmissions and seeing these other people try to survive, but ultimately fail due to the evil that is on the ship. The gameplay of Dead Space is fun, rewarding, and inventive. Since Isaac Clarke is equipped with his engineer suit, his movements aren't very fluid and majestic, but controlling him is snappy and feels good. It always feels like you are in control, and the way he feels is purposeful and resolute. Isaac can swing and stomp to not only chip some extra damage away from enemies, but to also interact with the environment by destroying a crate with some goodies inside or hitting some wires to unlock a nearby door. Throughout the game, you find weapons that you can use to take down the Necromorphs, and aiming and firing these vastly different weapons feels precise, accurate, and responsive. The weapons in Dead Space are all used practically for mining and whittling away giant chunks of rocks from planet cracking, but since the ship has been infested by zombie-like monsters, we get to use them in different ways. The first and most iconic weapon that can be picked up is the plasma cutter. Weapons have two modes of fire, a standard shooting mode and an alternate mode that varies from weapon to weapon. The best way to take down your foes, since their outer shells are very strong and they are naturally fast, is to cut off the limbs. The plasma cutter's alternative mode switches the cut of the gun, so you can either shoot the plasma out vertically or horizontally, making fights much more immersive and interactable, giving the player more freedom with how they play while also providing more solutions to problems they may come across. Some other weapons that get added to your arsenal are the Ripper, which holds out spinning saw blades that can be fired and dig into your opponent's bones, or the Flamethrower that can hold off a lot of enemies and gradually cause damage over time. Isaac can upgrade his weapons using power nodes that can be found throughout the ship, or you can buy them from the shop within the game. Upgrading your weapons by increasing different attributes like its firepower, ammo capacity, and rate of fire make your trip throughout the Ishimura's decks a lot easier. You can also upgrade other things through your rig by using the nodes to increase your health, the longevity of your stasis, or your oxygen tank. You can upgrade your armor at points and find different weapon schematics to increase their skill tree and upgradable paths. The game is very inviting and engrossing by always being able to quickly see and react accordingly to the user interface through its visual components. Isaac's health is displayed on the back of his engineering armor, and beside that is the stasis meter, which can both be refilled with a press of a button if you have a health or stasis pack in your inventory. When a weapon is aimed, the amount of ammo is displayed above it. The map, menus, and calls from other characters are all displayed in real time through the technology equipped to Isaac's rig. All of these systems are important when it comes down to a fight. The necromorphs are formidable and can easily get the jump on you. They can crawl around through the vents and can pop up just about anywhere at any time. A cool addition to the remake is that since you can basically go anywhere throughout the ship whenever you want, the necromorph can also be anywhere. So even if you fully completed a section or area, you are never really safe running around. There are different types of necromorphs that attack you in different ways, so you need to be prepared to take down a variety of enemies in different ways at any given time. Some enemies crawl on walls and have tentacles that grow out of its back and shoot projectiles at you. Some are fast and stay low to the ground. Some are more heavy and slow, but if taken down incorrectly can prove to be more of a problem. Finding out how to take care of these monsters efficiently is part of the fun and terror you'll experience throughout the game. Early in the game, you find a kinesis module, which helps with fights since with it you can tear off limbs, pick up exploding canisters, or rip pipes from the wall to throw at and possibly impale the alien freaks. Since Isaac Clarke is a systems engineer, his expertise gives him an upper hand in certain areas and situations where others might not succeed. Included in the remake is the ability to switch the electrical power at certain points to different things such as doors or the lights. Not only does that harken back and give reason to Isaac Clarke as a character, but it is a methodical gameplay element where you have to decide whether you want to sacrifice the lights in a big room with necromorphs or the O2 level in the room with you, now having to rely on how big your oxygen tank is. Isaac can also use stasis stations or packs to fill up his stasis meter. Being able to slow enemies down to a crawl by throwing stasis at them can help out a lot while trying to line up a shot, slow the action down a bit to catch a quick breath, or to simply just run away. Stasis can be used to slow objects down too, like broken doors, so you can safely pass through. The zero-G sections of the remake have also been overhauled to something more pragmatic in design, but possibly a bit cumbersome in practice. In the original game, you can jump from point to point in zero-G situations. They changed that so now you can just free float and control Isaac within the space, similar to Dead Space 3. The controls during these parts can be a little annoying though. You use the shoulder buttons to spin or to quickly realign yourself to the original balance of the room, but it can be a little too floaty at times. Quickly changing directions usually doesn't stop you from still going in the direction you were going before, which can very easily cause a free hit for the enemy or an accidental death from a large spinning fan. It is also very easy to confuse yourself while you are flying upside down, even while using the buttons to rotate. Hitting the button to completely rebalance yourself either doesn't work right away or takes a bit too long to actually work. The original game came out in 2008, and the story, atmosphere, characters, level design, sound, and gameplay were all excellent back then. The remake just increases everything tenfold. Graphically, the game is stellar. There is so much more detail to everything, the build of the ship in particular. Everything on the ship looks purposeful and seems as if it has a meaning to it. This is blended in with how you can practically go to any part of the ship at any time. Unlike the original, the remake is more open. It is not split into different levels. This allows you to go to any part of the ship whenever you feel like it, which really gets you immersed in the environment and more cautious of enemies as well. A problem I had with the environments with this remake is the lighting. The game is basically a one-to-one recreation of the first game, but even so, some rooms can look completely foreign due to the graphics and the lighting. At some points though, the lighting can make things way too bright or way too dark, completely changing the mood a room once conveyed before. Setting the mood for a horror game is for sure a hard thing to do, and creating pressure and tension through the atmosphere is top priority when it comes to the pacing of a horror game, so lighting is incredibly important. There are times throughout this remake that some areas are just too dark. Like there's times where it's dark and you're like, okay, the power just went out and I'm in this closed off room, it makes sense. But there's other times where it seems unintentional. Fighting off necromorphs in the dark can be scary, but it becomes annoying if it feels like the game isn't providing any reason for it to be as dark as it is, especially with how immersive everything else plays out. Another big change in the Dead Space remake is that Isaac talks. He never spoke in the original, but talked in the game's following. Now Isaac is included in the conversations with his team members and other survivors on the ship. Him being able to talk definitely fleshes out his character and provides a solid through line of his past and ideals throughout the story of Dead Space overall, but sometimes it can sort of ruin surprises and story beats. Since it's less about us as the players being the character of Isaac and more about Isaac being his own character, he reacts to situations accordingly, but that means he is just another voice in the conversations, which means some points in the story seem to be realized and fleshed out faster than before. Some other changes the remake added is that they made the bad guys more clearly the bad guys, and multiple threats throughout the story are assumed to be more threatening by how they are portrayed now. A lot of doors, lockers, and areas are locked now, and there is a keycard system. Throughout the game, you can level this up to backtrack to previous areas and obtain upgrades and items that were previously out of reach. Backtracking makes more sense through a gameplay perspective because you're able to travel around the areas freely, but there is nothing really new in that regard. All of these locked things weren't locked in the original game since it was more level to level based. Locking rooms and items makes sense and acts nicely world building wise, but only acts to up your game time gameplay wise. There really are only a couple new areas based off of the freedom you have with the zero gravity. The sound design and music have been expertly redefined to make you feel the impact of various things, whether it's the jingle for completing a chapter, steam erupting from bursting pipes, or soft whispers of creepy cryptic messages caused from hallucinations. Since its launch, Dead Space Remake has been riddled with some annoying bugs as well. After going through the game twice, I never ran into anything detrimental, but on my third playthrough on Impossible mode, I did run into a game-stopping glitch. A door I had to go through wouldn't open and continuously had standby on it. With no way around it, I couldn't continue with my run. Impossible mode uses only one save file and doesn't autosave, and if you die, the save gets erased. So there wasn't another save or autosave I could go back to. Luckily, that problem got fixed soon after I got it, but I've seen other bugs too, like save stations, stores, and upgrade stations not working and having standby displayed on them too, as well as some death loop bugs where sometimes people have to restart the game. There's nothing too weird or out of the ordinary about these glitches, but I like to mention them because it does ultimately have an impact on my and others' experience with the game. Dead Space Remake's job as a remake seemed too easy with how good of a game the original Dead Space already was, and still is. But not only did the remake go above and beyond, it knocked it out of the park. Dead Space Remake is the definitive way to experience Dead Space. Providing Isaac with a voice in this game really expands his character and story. The gameplay feels amazing and is very fun by providing creative weapons and abilities that match the intensity of the chaotic enemies. The game is terrifying by the way it handles the creaking, echoing spacecraft and blending the sounds and music beautifully to increase the dread and panic within the atmosphere. Although the lighting can be off at some points, the decision to let Isaac talk can sometimes reveal too much, and zero gravity being a bit too cumbersome were issues that I had with the game, I found them to be little problems when compared to the other amazing aspects the game bestowed to me. Dead Space is a fantastic horror game with great overall design and will scare your pants off if you dare to venture into the depths of the USG Ishimura to face off against the petrifying necromorphs. I give Dead Space Remake an 8 out of 10.